Retired U.S. general shocks everyone. Russia's defeat is inevitable. In a world gripped by ongoing conflict, few voices carry the weight and clarity of military experts who have witnessed war firsthand. Retired U.S. Army Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, former commanding general of U.S. Army Europe, has recently delivered a stark and unflinching assessment of the Russia-Ukraine war. Alongside Robert Fox, defense editor at the London Standard, their combined insights reveal a brutal truth. No ceasefire or negotiation will halt Russia's aggression, only a total, undeniable defeat will. And according to them, that moment is closer than many realize. Deep into their analysis, exploring the current battlefield realities, Russia's military failures, the economic toll of the war, and the geopolitical forces shaping the conflict's future. We'll also examine the implications for Ukraine's security and what the potential endgame could mean for global stability. The current battlefield, a war of attrition and endurance. Understanding the predictions about Russia's defeat requires first grasping the situation on the ground. General Hodges paints a grim picture of the conflict's current phase. For soldiers entrenched in places like Pokrovsk, the war is nothing short of a nightmare. The eastern Ukrainian city has been described as an urban apocalypse, with relentless Russian assaults leaving the battlefield shattered and parts of the city uninhabitable. In one recent day alone, Pokrovsk endured 52 separate Russian attacks, while Ukrainian forces fought fiercely to hold ground in surrounding settlements such as Kalinov, Lysivka, and Tarasivka. Yet, not all fronts are equally dire. In the Kursk direction, Ukrainian forces made a bold incursion into Russian territory by the end of 2024, controlling over 540 square miles at one point. This move was strategic, aiming to disrupt Russian logistics and apply pressure. However, Russia mounted a powerful counteroffensive, reclaiming most of the lost ground and forcing Ukraine to withdraw, leaving them with about 22 square miles of territory inside Russia. Despite these setbacks, Ukrainian operations continue, notably in Belgorod, signaling ongoing pressure inside Russian borders. Hodges describes the war as an industrial competition where both sides are locked in a battle of attrition, not just militarily, but also economically and psychologically. The key question is whether Russia can sustain its war efforts before its economy collapses or whether Ukraine can achieve its objectives before negotiations become necessary. The evidence points to Russia's hourglass nearly emptying, with its economy and military capacity steadily eroding. Economic toll on Russia. The war's strain extends far beyond the battlefield. According to economists surveyed by Reuters, Russia's GDP growth is expected to slow drastically, from 4.1% in 2024 to just 1.7% in 2025. The Kremlin faces mounting pressure as the war drains resources, undermines economic stability, and saps political support. This economic weakening is a critical backdrop to the military stalemate and sets the stage for Russia's potential collapse. Russia's military failures. A closer look. General Hodges highlights three major surprises regarding the Russian military's performance in this conflict, all of which underscore the depth of Russia's difficulties and foreshadow its potential downfall. 1. Underperformance and poor planning. Hodges expected the Russian army, and indeed all branches of its military, to perform much better than they have. Instead, the forces have been plagued by chaos and poor coordination. One of the root causes, he explains, is that the operation was orchestrated not by the General Staff but by the FSB, Russia's principal security agency, resulting in a flawed and poorly conceived military strategy from the outset. The consequences have been staggering. Since Russia launched its full-scale invasion on February 24, 2022, the losses have been immense. As of April 8, 2025, Ukrainian General Staff reports indicate that Russia has lost over 926,000 troops, including killed, injured, and captured, alongside massive equipment losses. 10,572 tanks, 22,011 armored fighting vehicles, 43,227 vehicles and fuel tanks, 25,860 artillery systems, 1,359 multiple launch rocket systems, 1,126 air defense systems, 370 airplanes and 335 helicopters. These losses have severely crippled Russia's combat capabilities and capacity to respond effectively to Ukrainian offensives. 2. Failure to achieve air superiority. One of the most critical failures has been Russia's inability to secure air superiority. Despite having a numerical advantage, the Russian Air Force has been unable to dominate the skies. This failure stems from several factors. Effective Ukrainian air defense systems, including advanced Patriot and S-300 missile systems, forcing Russian aircraft to fly at vulnerable low altitudes. Corruption and maintenance issues that have reduced aircraft readiness. Poor coordination between Russian air and ground forces, leading to ineffective operations. An overestimation of their own air force capabilities, a recurring theme across Russian military branches. This inability to control the air has left Russian ground forces exposed and impaired their overall strategic effectiveness. 3. Reliance on North Korean ammunition and troops. Perhaps one of the most shocking revelations is Russia's dependence on North Korea for ammunition and drone supplies. Hodges notes that he would have never guessed Russia would need to turn to North Korea for such critical resources. By October 2024, it was estimated that North Korea had sent over 20,000 containers of ammunition to Russia, equivalent to more than 9 million artillery shells. Ukrainian intelligence estimates that up to 60% of the shells fired by Russian artillery in late 2024 originated from North Korea. In addition to weapons, Russia has reportedly deployed around 12,000 North Korean troops. However, their combat effectiveness has been dismal. Ukrainian officers who encountered these soldiers described their tactics as relics from the Korean War, outdated, reckless charges across open fields that resulted in heavy casualties. Hodges refers to these troops as cannon fodder, underscoring the human cost of Russia's desperation. This reliance reveals the dire state of Russia's military resources and highlights the flawed strategies perpetuating its prolonged conflict. Putin's grandiose promises versus reality. Despite these setbacks, Vladimir Putin has continued to portray Russia as a formidable military power. One notable example is the hyped Orshnik missile, touted as a revolutionary hypersonic weapon capable of Mach 10 speeds and multiple warheads. Putin claimed this missile could bypass any defense system and change the course of the war. In reality, military experts quickly debunked these claims. The missile is largely a repurposing of old technology, with only about 10% new components. Its accuracy is questionable, and its battlefield impact has been more psychological than strategic, as seen in the strike on Dnipro. Hodges interprets Putin's grand claims as a last attempt to intimidate the West with nuclear threats. However, he believes that no one genuinely expects Russia to use nuclear weapons, dismissing these threats as wasted efforts. Putin's escalation and the path to defeat. Far from conceding defeat, Putin has launched Russia's largest military conscription in years, calling up 160,000 men aged 18 to 30. His plan is to expand the Russian military to 2.39 million troops, with 1.5 million serving actively. This massive mobilization signals a refusal to back down and a commitment to prolonging the conflict regardless of cost. Yet, General Hodges is clear on what must happen for Russia's militarism to end defeat. He argues that without a decisive military defeat, the cycle of conflict will continue, potentially with another authoritarian leader like Putin rising in the future. Defeating Russia militarily is not just crucial for Western security but also for the Russian people, who currently see only a tiny elite benefiting from the country's wealth. Predictions for Russia's future: the summer reckoning. While Hodges refrains from providing an exact timeline, Robert Fox offers a more specific forecast. Fox predicts that Putin's window to maintain momentum is rapidly closing and that a decisive turning point could come as soon as the summer of 2025. He warns that despite Putin's current ties with Donald Trump, whom he refers to as Putin's friend in the White House, this alliance may not be enough to sustain Russia's position. Fox highlights the complex dynamics between Putin and Trump. While Trump might push for a negotiated peace to avoid further bloodshed, Putin's concept of winning is tied to avoiding humiliation and maintaining a narrative of Russian strength. This tension could either prolong the war or precipitate an abrupt end if Trump's unpredictable style forces Putin into a corner. What if there's a ceasefire? Fox is skeptical about the likelihood of a short-term ceasefire, rating its chances at less than 50-50. He believes Putin is more likely to use the coming months to regroup and strengthen his forces. However, if a ceasefire does occur, it raises critical questions about Ukraine's future security. General Hodges stresses that the only true and reliable security guarantee for Ukraine is NATO membership. He points to countries like Finland and Poland, which have built robust defense systems and ready reserve forces in response to regional threats. Without NATO's protective umbrella, Ukraine would remain vulnerable to renewed aggression. Alternative security arrangements, such as United Nations peacekeepers, are seen as impractical. Hodges argues that any peacekeeping force must be equipped with real military capability and authorized to act decisively against violations, something Russia has repeatedly ignored in past agreements like Minsk. The importance of NATO and international support. Hodges is unequivocal in his support for Ukraine's NATO membership, emphasizing the strategic benefits for the entire region. Ukraine's large, experienced military and growing defense industry would significantly enhance European security. He dismisses fears of a direct NATO-Russia conflict, pointing out that if Russia cannot defeat Ukraine with limited Western support, it is unlikely to succeed against NATO's full military power. Fox, however, expresses frustration with the current coalition of the willing, describing it as more diplomatic theater than a practical military alliance capable of enforcing peace. He highlights the proactive stances of smaller nations like the Baltics and Norway but stresses the need for strategic planning to prepare for worst-case scenarios, including potential Ukrainian military collapse or a sudden diplomatic shift. Conclusion: the inevitable defeat and its global implications. The conflict in Ukraine remains fluid and uncertain, but the analysis from General Ben Hodges and Robert Fox offers sobering clarity. Russia's military is in decline, its economy strained, and its strategic options narrowing. The cycle of militarism under Putin can only end with a decisive defeat, which experts predict could come within months. For Ukraine and the international community, the stakes could not be higher. The future of European security, the stability of the global order, and the fate of millions of people hang in the balance. As we watch the conflict unfold, one question remains: is this truly the beginning of the end for Putin's regime, or is he merely buying time to prolong the war? We invite you to share your thoughts and predictions. What do you believe the coming months will hold for Russia, Ukraine, and the world? Your perspective matters. Join the conversation below.